What's up guys, C2113 here, and today I'm going to be giving you my full review of the JBL Boombox. Alrighty guys, so I've had the JBL Boombox for a week now, and I've really had the time to use it as my daily driver speaker whenever possible and put it through its paces and see how it stacks up against my former daily driver, the JBL Extreme. Now, again, as somebody that listens to a lot of music and someone who prefers to listen to music on a speaker as opposed to headphones, Bluetooth speakers really have always been an important part of my life and my daily use gear. However, that being said, that doesn't mean I'm willing to take just any speaker, and I think unfortunately that is the case here with the JBL Boombox. Now, although this speaker impresses me in many ways, it disappoints me in probably the most important way, which is sound quality. Now, I will go over first what is good about the speaker, what I like, and then I'll cover the big issues with sound and what I don't like. So we'll start with what I do like. Generally, I like the very rugged construction. I like the fact that it's IPX7 certified, meaning it's, capable of being put into water and totally waterproof. I do like the buttons being canted forward just slightly. So on a JBL Extreme, obviously they're top center, right? But on the Boombox, they're moved forward, making them a little easier to see because of the handle, and also just generally easier to access since it is a much larger speaker. Another thing I like, of course, is the same nylon material that's on the JBL Extreme. I do like that a lot. I think it is a nice clean look, and although some people might not like this, I tend to like it because, again, I think it gives a very nice clean look, and it doesn't look like all other speakers in the market, though speakers nowadays are looking more and more like this in terms of the front material because it is a nice, aesthetically pleasing design. I also like the passive radiators. I like, obviously, the increased guard here. On the JBL Extreme, they were very close to the edge, but here on the Boombox, you've got a little bit more depth there to protect these large radiators. On the bottom, I do like I said in my overview and unboxing, I like the large foot on the bottom. It generally makes it much easier to balance. So when you go to put it down, it'll go sit down much easier than your JBL Extreme. JBL Extreme, if you don't plant it just right on the ground, it will tend to roll instead of sitting flat. So that is a huge bonus as well. I love the handle. It's always been something that I missed on the JBL Extreme, just not having a handle and being forced to use the strap at all times was always an inconvenience for certain situations. So that's another thing as well. I like the application and feature of your indoor and outdoor mode. Very useful. The outdoor mode really is more effective at projecting sound outdoors, and the indoor mode really does tune the sound to be less boomy for indoor use. Generally, I like the flap here as well. It's an excellent double knife edge seal, as you can see here. So, no water's getting in here when this flap is fully closed. I also, of course, like that you've got two USB outputs for charging and that you've got aux in. Again, pretty standard stuff. The last thing I do like, really, is the same great interface here with your simple four buttons, four press buttons, and then your two center rubber buttons. That makes things really easy, doesn't overcomplicate things. Play, pause, skip, volume up, volume down, Bluetooth connection, your Connect Plus, and your power button. It makes things really simple. And I like that they kept that interface as opposed to changing it up, because again, it really does make the entire JBL ecosystem seem to just mesh and play together and be very nice and very familiar for anyone picking up this speaker. So I like that as well. Now I do want to cover some of the bad elements. For starters, I did mention that these radiators, I liked how they had an increased guard around the rim, but nonetheless, they are very easily impacted by something else that is not wide enough to be stopped by the outer rim. And that was enough of a problem on the JBL Extreme that I was worried. But now, with a radiator this large and with that much more of a gap to your, your rubber diaphragm there, it is kind of scary. And I think that, with something this large, you run a much higher risk of significantly damaging or tearing the diaphragm around the radiator, and that's not a good thing. So although it would maybe look a little bit less attractive, some sort of guard on here would have been nice. Another thing that I'm generally not a fan of, that I've talked about also being a fan of, is the seal on the back. So this port seal here does a great job of sealing out the water. However, even after a week and a half of use, it is extremely difficult to get open and closed. And this is especially true if you don't have as much strength or if you've got bigger fingers, and I have small fingers, so I can at least get my thumb in there. But I think for someone with much bigger fingers and hands, you're going to really struggle to get this thing open because, again, it's very, very stiff. And so although it does a good job sealing, if every time you're trying to open it, you're breaking a nail or you're twisting your nail or something, that's not a pleasant experience at all. So I'm not a huge fan of this seal in that respect. Although it does a good job sealing, it's very difficult to open and close. This speaker, like on the JBL Extreme, has indication lights right down here for your charge level. However, again, although I love having indicator lights, and I definitely don't think that's something they should get rid of, the placement is a serious problem. Because when the speaker is sitting down, even if you're looking at it head on, you really struggle to look down that far underneath the speaker to see those indicator lights. So as a result, I would often find myself tipping the speaker up just to see how much power I had left. And that's annoying to say the least. All they would have had to do is maybe move it up here, move it even above the buttons. Now obviously it wouldn't be as clean of an interface, but that's sort of basically one of those scaling up design elements from a smaller speaker to a larger speaker that just doesn't work. In the same way that the radiators being this exposed on a large speaker is a little bit scary, having the lights, indicator lights for battery charge level that far down doesn't really make sense on a large speaker. Another thing that may just be an unavoidable thing with advancing the connection quality and features and that sort of thing, but the fact that this thing doesn't play at all, doesn't mesh at all with JBL Connect speakers and only works with JBL Connect Plus speakers seems like a pretty bad thing to me. It just seems like a very ugly thing to me because, again, that lack of backwards compatibility means that even if you were a longtime JBL speaker lover and you've got a JBL Extreme, you've got maybe an older JBL Pulse or something like that, you're not going to be able to connect it to this new speaker. Really a terrible thing in my opinion because you've bought into the JBL ecosystem and yet now they don't mesh. So again, while that might be, they say it's an unavoidable thing with the new wireless standard or something, to me it still seems like they could have engineered in backwards compatibility and that would have been a much better thing. Having it be unable to connect with the JBL Extreme is just kind of terrible because, again, you have the former behemoth and the new behemoth of the speakers, JBL speakers, and you can't connect the two. To me, that seems pretty awful in that respect. So now that we've gotten all the other things out of the way, I think we can talk about the biggest issue I have with this speaker. The issue that's ultimately going to make me return this speaker, and that is the sound quality. Now, this is not to say that the sound quality of this speaker is bad. It's not bad, and it's certainly light years ahead of any cheap, small, tiny, USB rechargeable speaker. That is an obvious point. However, having a JBL Extreme as my long-time everyday speaker, I've had time to get accustomed to this speaker and, more importantly, make a comparison between the two. And I can just say that at up to like 2/3 volume, this speaker really doesn't outperform the JBL Extreme in very many ways. Number one. But it does overall get louder than the JBL Extreme, so I will say that. Its biggest flaw is where it falls off in the mid-range and some treble. And as a result, it just kind of sounds like there's bass going on and then there's not a whole else a lot going on. And so as a result, the sound, the sound that comes out of the speaker just ends up sounding really strangely hollow until you maybe crank it past 60% volume. But below that, it's generally a really poor low volume speaker in that respect. And again, it doesn't really serve me well because although yes, there are times when I want to be blasting music, for the most part, I use my speaker for casual daily listening, for watching videos, for listening to podcasts, that sort of thing. And so having a speaker that doesn't sound great unless I crank the sound past 60%, 70%, that's really bad. That's not something that I want in a daily driver speaker. And ultimately, that is, in my opinion, the JBL Boombox's biggest downfall. I think if this speaker was priced at $300, maybe, $300, brand new retail, it might be worth it for some. But even then, I feel like with its output the way it is and its increased size, I mean, remember, this thing is 11 pounds and it's much bigger than the JBL Extreme. For me, it doesn't offer me enough of an advantage at this price point to justify justify getting it and dealing with all of its downsides, which are, again, sound is the biggest downside. It just doesn't quite sound like it should. You see this speaker, it looks impressive, it has impressive features, impressive build quality, but then you play it and it just seems to fall flat on its face. Like I said, the bass is there, but the mids and the highs, your mids and trebles, that sort of thing. I'm not an audiophile, so I don't know the exact terms here, but it just sounds hollow. The sound, it just doesn't sound right. I was going to try and recreate it on camera for you guys, but it's just something that I can't really do because I feel like no matter how I record it, you're not necessarily going to hear it, but it's very, very, very apparent in person. Like when you set these two speakers side by side, 9 times out of 10, everyone that I've showed the JBL Extreme to compared to the Boombox, unless I was cranking it past 60, 70% volume, every single time people chose the JBL Extreme. And so I think the struggle for me is, what's the point? What's the value? What's the value proposition, right? For buying a speaker that's much, much larger. We're talking like, 2-3 times larger, weighs a lot more. This is 11 pounds and costs twice as much. This is $400. You can now get a JBL Extreme for only $200. So again, value just isn't there. So in conclusion, guys, this is a good speaker, but I don't think it's worth the money. $400, absolutely not a great deal. I think there are way better speakers out there, if none other than the JBL Extreme for the money. Obviously, this will get louder, and for some people, they might like the sound. Maybe the issue is EQ, maybe this can be fixed. But it seems like even when I was messing with EQ settings, I just couldn't get the speaker to sound as good as the JBL Extreme. Now the JBL Extreme obviously is more bass oriented, it has a lot more bass boost. So, but the thing is, even if you want a flat sound, that is something that you can tune out using EQ. Whereas no matter what I really did, I couldn't tune out the issues I heard with this speaker using EQ alone. So, in conclusion, guys, I can't necessarily say I recommend this speaker. It seems to be far too overpriced for what it's offering, and that's a disappointment because I think, like I said, there aren't very many other problems with the speaker. It really is a very well-rounded speaker in every other way, with the exception of sound, which unfortunately with a speaker is the most important thing when it comes to reviewing it and its value proposition. So thanks for watching, guys. If you found this helpful, give me a like. I really appreciate it. If you want to leave a comment, you have a question, or you disagree with me, go ahead and leave it below. And if you want to see more, you know what to do. Get subscribed.